Welcome to Family Features, a podcast for anyone who wants to experience healthy relationships within their family. This is Dr. Corey Gilbert, and I'm honored to come alongside you to encourage, educate, and equip you as we focus on the different relationships that make us family. Let's get started and focus on today's feature. And welcome to the Family Features podcast. My name is Dr. Corey Gilbert, and today I have a special guest with me, Veronica Williams, and I look forward to our conversation today. So, Veronica, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. G. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Looking forward to hearing about what you do and the ministry you created and some of your story as well. So tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I am a wife, a mother, and a licensed minister, as well as a master certified life coach. I am living in the DMV, which is the DC, Washington metropolitan area. I'm originally from Compton, California.
That's a big move.
Difference. Yes. I moved here 23 years ago as a result of marrying my husband, who was in the military. He's now retired. And we just remained here on the East Coast.
Nice. And you said what did you call the DC area?
We call it the DC metropolitan Virginia area. And it's because everything is so close. You have Washington, D.C., you have Virginia, and you also have Baltimore. So they're all within an hour away from each other.
Neat. And so tell me how you got into ministry and what kind of work.
Oh, well, I got into ministry from when I was a young child, because my parents raised us in a Christian faith, and I just began to continue that life all throughout my young adult life, my adult life. As a result, when I connected with my husband, we both were doing youth ministry. And now that we're a little older, it has transitioned into couples ministry, pretty much, where we're actually doing coaching to couples that might have hiccups, but most importantly to couples that are getting engaged or want to consider engagement. And we talk with them about preparing for marriage. I've been in this for a while. As a result, I am also a licensed minister. So ministry is my life. Anybody I meet, there's always an opportunity for me to kind of help them. Don't have to be of any faith. Although our organization is faith-based, we also work with those that are not faith-based. According to, not to scare them away, but to be able to let them know how their life can still thrive in marriage.
What's the name of your organization?
Our organization is Alliance Seminars Coaching. As I said, It is an Alliance Seminars Coaching. And as I said, it is a veteran-owned, faith-based organization that provides clients with coaching services, motivational speaking, and certified workshops.
Wonderful. So you said veteran-owned, and that's referring to you and your husband as well.
Yes, it's referring. I am in business with my husband.
Nice. So you guys work together with couples?
We work together with couples.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes, we do it together. And there's sometimes when we're in a session and we may have to break out, where I would take the wife and he would take the husband.
Neat.
Bring them back together, especially when there's some hiccups involved, and you want to get, try to have some strategies and tools for them.
What kind of hiccups do you enjoy working with? They're not ever fun, I know, but you find yourself you love seeing the results from working with what?
a lot of it is miscommunication. A lot of the couples have miscommunication, not being heard or understood. And in some cases, one spouse may not have their voice valued. I think that would be it, along with helping them identify some of their concerns or issues. It doesn't always turn out to be the other spouse, but a lot of times it's something that we have to do individually. And so getting the other person to see where they might need to make some adjustments in their life, not so much the other person, but seeing themselves through unrealistic expectations that they have on the others, but putting it realistic and seeing what role they play in it as well.
Yes, I love that. I was telling a class today, it's kind of like holding up the mirror and letting it reflect back to them. And it's like, oh, wow, it changes everything when I see how I'm behaving or how I'm seeing things. So yes, it's wonderful.
You're absolutely right. We also, for 7 years pre-COVID, we taught a couples Bible study with our church, a weekly Bible study, and we use various Christian authors on helping couples navigate through their marriage. And I am like a person that gives out trinkets, right? So in one of our sessions, I gave all of the women a mirror and for them to share with their husbands. But I also gave the husbands flashlights. The mirror was that before you begin to blame someone, look at yourself. And for the husband, that he is to let his light shine as the head of the household, and to be a great leader. And so that flashlight was to help him remember, is my light so shining that my wife will respect me or love me and honor me in the way that I want her to?
Yeah.
So it's really some good little trinkets to give out as reminders.
I love that so much. I know I've noticed so much of young people today, they don't seem to see or understand, and they even reject any idea of marriage being the husband having almost any responsibility over the marriage. It's we're equal, and you do your thing, I do my thing. It kind of scares me the way that we're treating marriage so flippantly.
And that's one reason why we do the premarital counseling or premarital coaching, and we're the representatives at our church for them. In addition to it, we do it outside of our church because that is also our business. It's important to share with young couples and even some of the older people that are older and it's the first marriage for them and maybe a second marriage for the other spouse, just allowing them to identify what their role is. Understanding what your role is as a husband and your role as a wife and how we meet each other's needs and how teaching them or showing them some tools and strategies as to setting goals for your marriage. I mean, we set goals for our careers, our education, all of our whole life, right? But when we began to get married, we don't communicate with each other to discuss what our goals are for our marriage. And so it's so important to stress to even young people and those that are getting married that what do you want your marriage to look like? Because not everyone came from a marriage that looks perfect, right?
Right.
And so I would always let them know that there's no perfect marriage, but there are marriages that are healthy. And when we learn to not just take in what we saw, but decide who we're marrying and who they are, building a foundation from the ground up, and forgetting all of those, I call it excess baggage, which is from our own families and friends and relatives that may not have had healthy marriages. And we began to take that in, imagining, because from when we were young, That's all we saw, but not
Right.
realizing that it takes communication and understanding to say, what do you want in this marriage? First of all, why are we saying I do because we love each other, but what do we want our marriage to look like? And just talking about the history of your life. What was
Mhm.
going on in your life about, what's your idea of what a marriage looks like? This is what happened in my family. And also teaching them what real love is. Because sometimes it's so superficial when people say, I love you.
Oh, it so is so
And
true.
and it gives people insecurity because then they're
Mhm.
wondering, oh, does he really love me? Should I really say, I already said yes. If you're not secure as to identifying the definition for what you two identify love to
Mhm.
be, then that's a red flag. That's time to take a pause and talk about it before you even try to get married, because going into a marriage with all these different types of red flags without working on them doesn't mean that just because we say I do, that
Mhm.
those red flags will go away.
Yeah, it's not about not having red flags necessarily, as in being perfect. It's when I see the red flags, having the skills to manage the change or manage the growth that's needed. Yeah, when a couple's come in to see me, and I've been a counselor for 21 years, it's sad to me because it's almost like it just happened. We all of a sudden ended up in this bad space. And it's like, no, you've got 20, 30 years of growing this very unhealthy existence. And undoing that's hard. It's really difficult to undo because we're
It
entrenched in our
is.
ways.
And
Mhm.
one of the things that my husband and I talk about is we have to, when you go into marriage, marriage allows you to be vulnerable. And a
Mhm.
part of being vulnerable is that you have to divorce yourself. And that
Uh-huh.
is divorce all those selfish attributes that you carry along,
Nice.
and allowing and taking it from there to develop a healthy marriage where um, you know, you learn to respect and really demonstrate what real love is based on you all on the couple communicating.
Mhm. Well, and the true love piece in our culture is I'll do my thing and you do your thing. True love is I surrender myself. I give up my thing for you. I give up myself for you. I put myself second to you. And it's getting more and more countercultural,
It
which,
sure is. And
yeah.
even with that, when you begin to focus on how can I meet the needs of my spouse, you don't even
Mhm.
have to worry about yours, because that person is going to give you the respect and the honor that you want, and they're going to be working on that, on work taking care of your needs. It's so often, we do get in I mean, I've talked to so many people where they have told me, and this is what broke my heart, is I'm married, but I'm living single. And it comes
Yeah.
under the premise what you're talking about in terms of I do my thing, you do your thing. Well, is that really what a
Mhm.
marriage looks like? We might as well just stay single, right?
Oh,
What
sad.
is our purpose for getting married, and what attributes do you have that can go along with my attributes, and we can really be a dynamite couple, correct?
Mhm.
So trying to talk to people like that, and just being real with them. I think a lot of the women think that I'm gonna brown bag the man, and then the men think my husband's gonna get on the woman. But it's really about both of them learning about themselves individually. A
Right.
lot of people do get married prematurely, not understanding who they are,
Yes,
and then
exactly.
and then trying to get in a marriage and make that person be who you want them to be.
Right.
So it doesn't
Yeah.
work like that.
No. And in any relationship, it's that iron sharpens iron. It's that growing as a person. In marriage, it's that on steroids. It's a very heightened, which means we can love well and we also can really get hurt well.
Yes,
So
yes.
what do you do when you're you're serving your spouse and you're giving yourself and you're sacrificing yourself, but they're not giving it that back.
Well, the Bible speaks of even like if you are a saved woman and your husband is unsaved, it
Mhm.
tells you to don't beat him about the word, but you just continue to show love and demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Eventually, he will come along. And to be honest, I've met several couples like that. They
Mhm.
started out, he wasn't going to church, but she was a praying woman, and eventually you couldn't tell that he never went to church now that you
Yeah.
see them
I
35,
love that.
38 years in their marriage.
I
But I think
love that.
it's how we witness to one another, and it's how we demonstrate who Christ is in your life. Um,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, some people have to hit the Damascus road. They have to hit rock bottom in
Mhm.
order to realize that they need a savior, or to realize that they need help out of whatever habit or addiction that they have. But we don't always have to go that route if we just kind of
And
recognize it in the
I
beginning.
wish more would choose not to go that route. Oh,
Right.
it's
So wouldn't life be
so
much
painful.
easier not to have all
Yeah.
those hiccups or those hard knocks,
Yeah. And
school
like
of hard
my worst
knocks?
enemy, yeah, my worst enemy is me. And so learning that I'm the one that gets in the way of me having what I actually say I want. It's not someone else. It's me. As you have said multiple times, it comes back to each person growing separately. I love that. You
Yeah,
have
growing
two.
separately.
When I mentioned to couples I talk to that there's three people in the marriage and not the triangle with God and him and her, but the idea that there's him, there's her, and there's an us. And that us needs tending to. You need to
Yes.
date, you need to pursue, you need
Yeah.
to learn each other's likes and dislikes, and but you're also two separate people. And so all three of those need the tending to when things are
Exactly.
bad,
And
really a
right.
whole lot.
And love and the relationship takes sacrifice.
It
What am
does.
I willing to let go of so that I can be the best person that I want to be? It's about being the best you.
Yeah.
A lot of
Well,
times couples meet each other and they're just it's their representative. And
mhm.
then when they get married, um, you know, someone said, well, he changed or she changed. Did she really
Yes.
change?
Yeah.
That was just something you didn't see because
Correct.
the other person says, I've been like this my whole time, because we never
Yeah.
saw the selfishness in it
Yeah.
because we were focused on something else that took us away from that.
Mhm. Well, and the thing about you said a minute ago, the idea of the be all that you can be, that's counter to dying to self. Unless you look at your theology a little more in depth there, we kind of want our cake and eat it too. We think that being all that I can be means I can act however I want to act and do whatever I want to do. And it's like, no, part of what God's doing is pruning us. He's shaving off stuff that
Mhm.
doesn't need to be a part. And so dying to certain things actually is me growing into the beauty of that God wants me to be as a husband, as a wife, as a every hat I put on. It's a lot of pruning. We don't see marriage as a place that prunes, but it is. It very much reveals some of the nasty stuff that needs dealing with, like our selfishness.
Yeah, we want the end result, but we don't want to do the work. It takes work.
But I would
And
say we don't even know what the end result we want, I think, is garbage compared to what
it's
God wants.
unrealistic. It's unrealistic. But
Yeah.
I think what God does do, though, when He brings two people together and there are
Mhm.
challenges, it's like you said, it's Him pruning them to become one. And
Yep.
if people understand that concept of, what we're doing already is not working. So
Yeah.
let you keep going at it, and you're still coming through these war zones, or
Mhm.
conflicts and but it takes more than that. It takes, like, okay, so what, if you're a Christian, it's like, what is God trying to show us? He's trying to develop both of us into one, but it's not so much develop you into one, as much as becoming one, as in a single number one. Is that us you talk about, but most importantly is, our faith is at a challenge when we meet someone else, and that is we want to be happy, but we're being challenged to be holy. You know, so that's the thing. It's like, do you really want to live a life of holiness, of faithfulness, of any things that does not look like Christ, in the image that He's created us? So, and that is what therein lies a lot of the issues. People don't want to be holy. I mean, they want to be holy, but they cannot be holy because it's just that thing within them, that whatever tempts them, that habit, the selfishness of not wanting to get rid of what isn't working in our marriage. And that's really what it is. It takes communicating and saying, you know what, this isn't working. Let's do without this, but what can we put in place of it? Because really, when we come to Christ, a lot of people don't want to accept Him because they feel like they got to give up so much. But what they don't realize, you giving up, so it's not really giving up anything. It's really, like you say, it's surrendering your will to His will. And something greater. And when we walk in and anchor our marriages with Him being in the center, it helps to guide us to realizing that our marriage is ministry. It's our first ministry. Because we can't really live out a Christian life when we're married if we're first not taking care of our home, and if we're first not doing what God asked us to do as husbands and wives. And that was for our husbands to love their wives as Christ loved the church, and for women, it was for them to submit to them. But when you think about the word love, I just say replace it with the word respect. And then for submit, replace that with the word respect. It's all about respecting one another. And you can even remove those words and you can just replace it with love, because that's really what marriage is all about. Us loving and respecting one another to build a marriage that will thrive and become who Christ wants us to be, because we're not in it individual. We do have things that we have to accomplish individually, but collectively, our marriage represents Him as a witness as to what you can do, even through the hardships and even through the challenges. It doesn't mean divorce. It just means that we got to work a little harder to get our marriage on track, that we can learn to live harmoniously with each other by mutually loving and mutually respecting one another.
Love it, love it, love it. Yes, yes. So what would you say to people right now where this past 2 years has challenged their marriage to the breaking point? This has been a crazy couple of years here. We're a year and a half, a year and 3/4 now. We're done. Like it's been too much stress, too much unknown, too much change. What would be some of your direction to them?
Well, some of the things that I told people is that when the pandemic hit, if you had unresolved issues prior to the pandemic, and then you had to go home and live together 24/7
so
because
true.
Work was your reprieve, right?
Yes, it was.
It was a challenge for couples to learn how to resolve the true issues that were there. Also, it took you to just really communicating, spending time with one another, like you say, planning spontaneous dates, learning, and then reflecting on, why did you get married anyway? And why did you first love this person? What was it about this person that you love that you so much despise right now? And talking about it and being vulnerable, not wearing your feelings on your sleeve, and just having some real, not surface talk, because that's what happens in relationships as they build, as you're dating. It's more surface talk than it is deep, realistic talk, reality talk.
Heart
to heart, sincerity, honesty, and learning to know that this person who I marry should be my best friend. There should be no secret.
Foundation.
It should be
Exactly.
no
That's the
secrets.
foundation.
I had some best friends as a girl, when I was single, as a
Yep.
female, as a guy,
Yep.
my homeboy, my buddy, whatever.
Yep.
Um, Now that should transition into your wife. It doesn't
Yes.
abandon your friendships. It's just saying that now I'm
Okay.
imparting all my in-depth things about me into this person to know who I am, how I think, what way I am, and to realize that I am not the enemy. I'm not sleeping with the enemy. I'm not married to the enemy,
Yep.
right? Because people
Yep.
feel like that, right?
Yes, they
And
do.
then the other thing I would say to couples is seek out marital counseling through marriage counselors. That if there's some unresolved issues from your past that are so deep that you can't live with today, you need to go and get marriage counseling. Get to the professionals that can.
Yes.
Now, for what we do as coaches is we work with you from today on. A little bit of the past, but we can't go as deep as licensed marriage counselors. But if this is just a new issue that just came about and it has some residuals to the past, well, what will it take for you to move on? What can you do more of?
That's a great
How does
distinction
it
you just
make
made.
you feel? Go ahead.
Yeah, the great distinction you just made between coaching and counseling. You got stuff to resolve from the past. You're probably better to go to someone who's a licensed counselor, but current moving forward, it's a great thing to partner with a coach, someone that actually can walk alongside you going forward. So that's a good distinction.
And that's one thing that we do at our church for the pre-engaged, for the couples
Mhm.
that are engaged and then they get married, because we've done several of those. We do them a lot every year. We have somebody, but what we've managed to do is we connect. We've done so many counseling sessions, but what we do with our premarital couples, and once they get married, we connect them to a couple that has been married some years, which we call them mentor couples.
Yes,
They
love that.
have some wisdom and they have some similar issues that they've learned to resolve over the years as this couple may encounter,
Mhm.
such as an example of that is blended families.
Mhm.
Getting with someone else, how did it work for you? What did you have to work through to that?
So
um,
important.
and work with them throughout that whole year. And what we found out is they become really good friends. And those are couples that when you can't communicate with your spouse, you can go to that person
Yep.
and that husband and wife can draw you two together to
Mhm.
talk about it and not run away from it. And to
And that's
say,
a different level. So you've talked about counseling is one
mhm,
level, coaches is another level, but mentor couples is another level.
yes,
And
it takes
we need
that.
all of those. We need all
You
those.
just like it says, it takes a village to raise raise up our children. It takes
Yeah,
a village to thrive in marriage.
it
And it
does.
takes other couples that see other couples going through and having a hard time to realize and say, you know what, we were just like that, but we're not like that now. Let's try to ask that couple out for dinner or invite them to our home and just have some
Mhm.
conversation with them so that they can realize that they're not in this all by themselves. And so
Yes.
that's what it takes. It
Well, and
takes
that's the body of Christ.
That's the body of Christ and just how you move it in.
Mhm.
Old school was my parents. You get married, you keep it in the house, you don't tell anybody, right?
Yes.
But I realized that that doesn't always work, because if you keep it to each other, you're not working it
Well,
out.
that's what I tell my premarital couples, you're going to have problems. I guarantee you will have problems. It's just a matter of who are you going to go talk to. And so when I tell them about like sexual problems, every couple's going to have struggles in their sex life. That's normal. Don't freak out. But if you go talk to someone and they're asking you details about your sex life, run. That's too much information.
Too much
No one needs to know their
information.
details.
Nope.
But if they know what they're doing, someone like me who's a licensed sex therapist, and then I can help you, but I'm not going to be asking details.
Right.
And so I can help you in a session or two. Usually it's not as daunting as it seems, but
Mhm.
same for other issues, communication issues. Some things need to go to a counselor. Others can go to a coach.
Yes.
Others, it'd be great to have a good mentor couple that you
Yes.
can talk through more casually.
Right. And other issues that couples are dealing with was trust issues,
Yes. Hmm.
insecurity, I don't know, not being honest, not trusting that that person is really telling you the truth when you ask them a question.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about being a sex therapist, I think it's easy to just it's helpful for couples to understand that how to distinguish between sex and intimacy.
Yes.
They're not the same.
No, they're not. Well said.
Intimacy leads to the sex, right? But it's really what we do outside of the bed and outside of that leads to that leads to the sex that makes it a happy sex. But what we have to realize is that God created sex for couples, not for, I'm not talking to singles about
Right.
fornication sex, right?
Right.
But when couples are having um, sexual encounters and love making, let's call it the real thing, what it's
Yes. I like
supposed to
that.
be. It's supposed to be love making. When you're connected with God, it glorifies Him that you can
Mhm.
make such wonderful love making music together because you're one, you're in alignment with Him, and
Yes.
two, you're in alignment with each other and you're in sync with the spirit of what God wants you to have.
Very well said. Love that.
Because a lot of times when we don't deal with the intimacy and our love languages outside of the bed, we begin
Mhm.
to have a crowded bed. And then we wonder why won't my wife make love to me tonight? Or,
Yep.
because you didn't realize and you didn't pay attention that there was something else in her needs that weren't being met before you got there. Maybe you didn't resolve an issue that she really wanted you to talk about and you just procrastinated about, blew her off. Um,
Yep.
you're not going to get her to be fun and happy just because you're in the
Yes.
same bed, right?
Yeah.
So meeting those needs, and I'm so glad you talk about that because I think that's one thing that couples have a preconceived notion or thought about is, and no one has ever told them about between a difference between intimacy and sex. And I
Well, and I
think
would
when
even
couples
say,
understand that, they will be better off and thrive.
yes, and even just the word sex. Most people say sex, they actually mean intercourse.
Exactly.
And sex is also much larger than just that one part of the whole. And
Yes.
so we've turned sex, kind of the whole thing, into something that we just do
Yes.
like we're animals. No, we are two people in a relationship
In a
called marriage.
relationship. Hmm. And
And go ahead.
no, go ahead. Finish.
What it demands, it commands a relationship. It's not something two people or two random people are just doing. That
Right.
dishonors Christ, and that actually is celebrated in hell, in a sense, to put it mildly.
Right.
Um, like we are made to bring sexual intimacy, two people coming together, but it's relationship, not something you just do. Sex is now casual, now flippant, now disposable, even. Oh, breaks the heart of God because that's not the design or the intention ever, ever, ever.
Mhm. And we also realize that, our sex looks a little different when we're 60. Might be okay when you're 20 and 30, but it gets a little different. You know,
Yeah.
Even in your 70s and 80s, we've had couples in our class that were in their 70s. And when they learned and discovered what we were talking about in our class, they said,
Mhm.
wow, this would have sure helped us 32 years ago.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I love hearing that. That's
and,
awesome.
and so just letting them know that
Yeah.
sometimes, and it was so funny. One of our couples, they was like, well, yeah, we're getting a little up there now. He said something. She was like, yeah, sometimes we have to make sure we take our socks off in the bed. And when he rubs my foot, I know what that means, or when I rub his foot. So
Nice
giving different little
signals.
symbols, because as you get old, and we won't be 20 forever. But you find how to develop other ways when you get older. So there's
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of things
I
you can
was
do.
I wasn't married till late 20s. And like you even think of that stage of life, and that was hard, single, and a lot of couples are struggling with the temptations and the pressure and the world telling them they should just enjoy whatever. So to me, the biblical sexual ethic of God has a design, stop trying to mess it up, stop trying to do it your way, follow his design, and it will pay dividends. Not in
Yes.
sex, that's not how he pays the dividends, but
No.
in a life that's actually, you don't have to worry about unintended pregnancies, you don't have to worry about sexually transmitted diseases, you don't have to worry. You mentioned earlier, this is your best friend. It should be
Yes.
your best friend.
Yes.
That's what it needs to be. Someone that you could trust with anything. You do trust with your heart, your soul, your body, something much more. It's funny how we can even give our bodies, and we've divorced that from our brain, and it's someone we don't even like anymore. And that's very revealing to me as to our culture and how much
Yes.
restoring we need to just teaching, but also practice.
Exactly. Like you, I was I was 30. I think I was
Mhm.
32 when I got married.
Yeah.
And so I'm an older mom of three
Mhm.
teenagers. So so to some people I probably look like I'm my kids' grandparents, right? Because our
No.
friends were having grandchildren when I was having children. So because they
Yes.
started right out of high school.
Yes.
So just allowing people to realize what a relationship is when you wait, when
Yeah.
you wait on the right person that God has for you.
Mhm.
And
It's worth it.
what people don't realize is that when we talk about the crowded bed, that is when you have sex before marriage. You're bringing in all these other people's personalities and things that you learn with them, and then that sometimes can be a hindrance to you comparing that person to the mate that God gives you, and that
That's
sets up
huge.
your honeymoon night as a
Yes.
disaster because
Yes.
you haven't allowed that person to show you who she is and
Mhm.
how you can become vulnerable to one another versus going on these other, like I said, other things that happen before marriage. And that's what people don't realize, that you're transitioning, when you're having sex before marriage, you're transitioning so many things into you that are not going to be healthy in your marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad to see what people do and decisions made, and how much that impacts them. I remember this one couple where she had lived with the guy for 2 years and he was a virgin, and they were like, I feel sad for what I've done. Oh, I'll never ever ever think about the guy that I was with before, is what she actually said. And I remember looking at her and go, that's not true. Speak truth. The truth
That's right.
is you're now bringing all of that baggage in, and you're going to have to die to it one by one, little by little, as you give yourself to your husband. And yes, you did gyp him in some way, but thank God for grace.
Thank God
Thank
for
for God
grace.
for his mercy.
Yes.
And you guys are going to now come together and restore and take back what was stolen, in a sense, by past mistakes, because that's what God majors in restoring redemption.
Yep. And what we do too, with our premarital couples, when that
Mhm.
has happened, and we tell them, even if they had already engaged in sexual activities,
Mhm.
and if one has been married before and one maybe just, I don't want to say it like it was a sleaze bag type of thing, but slept around.
Yeah, yeah.
That's being real, right?
Yeah, it is.
We tell them for that 12, because we do 1 year out from the marriage is what we like to do. And
Okay.
what we do is we tell them not to sleep together or not to get intimate in any way for that whole 12 years, so that God can kind of restore and consummate the marriage in the way that he desired it to be. Yeah. So basically, not getting to know your person sexually, or your fiance sexually, before you actually say I do. It's a lot of hard work, but you have to do it in your dating.
Yeah. I've even seen couples who they've just kind of abstained from, they've been there, done that, and abstained for a month or two before the wedding. Because it's not about the sexual. The sexual, that's easy. It's the heart. It's kind of resetting the heart, restoring the heart. I choose you, and here's my start date of we're married. Now you are now mine, I'm yours. Before we weren't. We were actually taking something that was not ours. Again, we've got a lot of cleaning up of our sexual ethic to do, which it sounds like you guys are doing an incredible job.
And we're robbing each other's bodies, because our bodies in the beginning are the temple of the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost. Exactly. And so when we're putting all these impurities into our body, and we're transmitting them over to someone else, before it is holy, before God can consummate it and sanctify it to the degree that he wants it, we don't understand that. But when we can sit down and really talk about what it really means, because to be honest, I remember hearing years ago the birds and the bees. I waited to hear about the birds and the bees. Well, I kept on waiting. I've never heard about the birds and the bees. Oh, God. And when I was in middle school, our science class was having a sex education week, and your parents had to sign off on it. My mother did not sign off on it. We were a Christian family. She said, I don't care what all these other parents did, but I do not want that particular, I don't want the school to teach you that. I want you to learn it from how God wants you to have it, right? So I really felt left out, but in a way, I was happy that I did, because I realized the more I grew in my relationship with Christ, is the more I began to trust him and lean on him for that. Not to say that even in your young life you get tempted because all your friends are having sex around you, or maybe having babies, and you're like not dating and have nobody that even want to have sex with you, right? Nobody want to sleep with you. But I think part of it is because people, and when I talk to guys that became a friend of mine or whatever, I was the kind of person that they say she's marriage material. Yes. You can't just take her out because you're going to get caught up. You're going to have to marry her.
Love it. I love that.
And so when I realized that, I was like, oh, well, great. And then you would say, if a mice can find cheese, surely the man that God has for me can find me, because mice are blind. They only go on sense of smell.
Yeah, my wife and I met on an online dating service. So it's one of those so crazy. I would have put money that there was no way, this is stupid. Yeah, we met through that, called equallyyoked.com in Dallas, Texas.
In Dallas, Texas.
We met face to face after a week of online exchange, and 10 months later we got married.
Wow. So, now was it equallyyoked.com exchange? Was that a Christian-based dating service?
It was. I actually was working there at the time, teaching dating and relationship classes and loving on people, and it was very much a ministry for me, not realizing that through that same thing I was going to find my wife of now 18 years. And it's just neat to see God can work in anything. My brother-in-law met his wife on eHarmony. So lots of other, God can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants it.
And I love that, because those are success stories. Mm-hmm. Those are success stories of what those types of dating services have done.
Yes.
But a lot of times I found that some of the women that were on these dating sites, the people weren't being truthful.
Oh, it's scary.
and it's very scary to date on an online service. So I'm so happy then.
The first time I met my wife in person, I chewed her out for giving me her address.
And you rightfully so. I always tell I tell my female friends, and not even, well, I was telling my friends back then, and I even tell young ladies today, is don't date, don't invite the person to your house on a first date. Meet out, go to a public place, and don't go to the movies. I hate the movies as a first date. You know, and I'll tell you, I hate movie. I went out with a guy, and I couldn't enjoy the movie because he's like, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" I'm like, "I see what you see," you know. So you learn right then that that's not somebody you want because he distracts you from your movie. That's awesome. From your movie. Yeah. So you learn different things, but I think going to dinner and being in a public place and allowing conversation to take place versus putting yourself in a situation that is going to be hard to get yourself out of.
Well, and being clear about the expectations. We're not going to kiss. Clear. We're not going to make out. We're not going to touch. We're not going to do anything. That needs to be so clear. But yet today it's exact opposite. Oh, it's the second date. It's time for this. Oh, it's the fifth date. It's time for that. It's like, no.
And boundary. Yes. And when I was in my dating season and years ago, it was known that if you were going out with somebody for 3 months, he was probably going to ask you to be his girlfriend or boyfriend. That's not true. I tell people, don't put your things in numbers, seek out God for that. But like you say, how people have this plan, like my first date, no touching, and then the second date. But you have to be real, you have to be clear. And even if you're shy, because I was shy, so I knew I had to continue to pray to ask God to show me what type of man he needed that could handle my shyness, but also, but allow me also to get out of my shyness, So I'm an introvert, but I'm also an extrovert. I love people. And I grew up in a very large family. I was the youngest. But I still developed a matter of shyness as I got into middle school, and I had male friends. I talked with the guys and all of that, but I wasn't like the one that they wanted to date, Back then they called it. Yeah, I was one to marry. I wasn't one that was going to give up any goods ahead of time. You have to work really hard.
That's right.
And that was my husband and I, my husband and I, we went to junior high and high school together. We met back up at our 10-year class reunion.
Oh, I love that. That is so cool.
I went single and I was with some friends. He came over to our table and we were talking, and then he gave out his business card. And then he went on his merry way. But my two friends, one was married, but she was just a little different from what I knew married women to be. And then the other one was single and didn't really have a dating life either. They said, oh, he probably made those cards up just for the class reunion. I said, I don't think so. I was already defending my husband before I knew he was my husband.
That's awesome.
And so he always came to town, and one particular time I couldn't meet with the group of friends. So he and I decided I was off on a particular day and I met up with him for lunch. We had such a great time talking. Then we began phone conversations. He was still in town. We went out. And one thing I did tell my husband, I said, well, the thing about me is that you're going to have to do something that is totally different and that is taboo. You're going to have to court me, because for one he lived on the East Coast, I lived on the West Coast, and when we were talking for many, many hours, there was a particular day that he called me right back, and I was like, wow, Lord, I just talked to him for several hours. I'm not calling him back because you answer in threes. I'm calling him back on Wednesday. I'll call him back in threes, and because I need to be praying how you want me to answer this, right? And when I called him back, he was like, well, I thought about what you said, and I want you to know that I really want to date you. I'm really up for the task of what it's going to take for you to really
Nice.
know that I really do want to get, I've got to know you, but I want to get to know you more. And
Love
we
it.
developed that from there, and it blossomed into a relationship. And that's why I can say today, when I talk about your husband should be your best friend. My husband is my best friend. I can talk to
Love that.
him about anything that I could talk to my best girlfriend about.
Yeah.
Even in the hard times of our lives, but I think
Same
what
here.
is,
Love that.
and I think what being able to do that helped us to understand and get through some of the challenges that we had in our marriage, the
Yeah.
most difficult times, and seeing how each other truly were who they said they were, as far as being believers in Christ Jesus and really relying on him. Because I think my husband really got to see me for who I really was, as far as trusting God in my life, during the time that we had a miscarriage. We not only had one miscarriage, we had two, but
Ooh.
we got through it. But we didn't, and we didn't get through it by ourselves. We got
Right.
through it with our friends and our family.
Yes.
And our faith is what led us. And sure enough, now I can say we have 3 children, but I did it with 2 births. I have a single son, and then I have twins, a boy and a girl. So God
Nice.
can bless and turn around any hardship, but you have to be able to trust him and lean on him, and know without a shadow of a doubt that he has your best interest. And so that's pretty much a testimony that I have, that I like to share with people that go through. And even when you feel like you're in a marriage and there's no hope, but there is, when you trust God, he can turn it around. I always say, sometimes our mess or our misery, God can make it to be a miracle. We just have to stay there and work it out and see how God would will work it out to be a miracle. I don't care what you're going through. When you trust God and you stay there, he can turn it around for you, but you got to believe it and know without a shadow of a doubt. And you have to have the heart to know that when you pray, that you are already trusting and believing that he is capable of doing it.
Love it. Love that. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, it's been so great getting to know you, hearing some of your stories and life, and sharing a little bit with our audience. Tell us more. Your website. What's your website?
Yes, our website is Alliance Seminars Coaching, as well as that's on Facebook, that you can reach us there as well.
Okay. So people can reach out if they're looking for coaching for their marriages.
Yep, through
and
Facebook.
Seminars and other
seminars,
resources.
Workshops, and we also not only do that, we also do leadership as well. So whatever you meet your needs. But through Facebook, it would be Alliance Seminars Coaching, and our website is Alliance Seminars. That's all one word. .org, O-R-G.
Okay, and those will be in the show notes if you need them, and you can reach out to Veronica. What is your husband's name?
His name is Darrell Williams.
Darrell. So Veronica and Darrell Williams. Wonderful. Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time today and for just getting to know you. And I love it. Just love hearing your heart. Just such a joy.
Yes, I enjoyed it with you too, Dr. G. I'm so happy we got to meet.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and talk to everybody soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Family Features Podcast. It has been an honor to serve. Find out more about Dr. Gilbert and his resources for you and your family's growth and success at healinglives.com. And if you think you could use some support along the way, be sure to book that call at bookdrg.com. And one more thing, if you found this helpful, please share this podcast with others so that we can change the world together.